All right.
Get your paychecks up to 2 days faster with Early Pay. True story. Welcome to Huntington.
Good morning, everybody.
New advertiser.
And welcome to New Advertising. Some old faces and some new faces, despite who our new sponsor is. I'm Saeed Khan, and welcome to the week that was. We are joined with an amazing panel, and despite the fact that it's not as gender equity as last week, much to the chagrin of Nancy, we will try. But she has informed us that she's going to take all 5 of us on.
I can hold the weight of the women's opinion world on my broad shoulders. So carry on.
She has
from calendar. Dinner with Bree.
Sorry about that.
Well, at least it was a female voice. But Nancy has the medal for a Meckler balance. There you go, if you want to bring in some of your chemistry. So we have joining us today retired Detroit homicide detective and consultant for Hollywood, Ira Todd. How you doing, Ira?
Good morning. How you doing?
Mr. Hollywood.
Mr. Hollywood.
Sandy, how you doing? Sandy.
Good.
Allan. Nancy.
Hey.
And that's a good enough segue. We will go next. Attorney, I was going to say attorneys general here, but attorney specialist Sandy Plotkin.
Wow. Thank you. Hello.
And attorney Bill Seikaly. Just a wave with the silent treatment. We have from Deadline Detroit, Nancy Derringer.
Hey, baby.
And wow, sexual harassment in the first 3 minutes. And then we have editor-in-chief, Allan Lengel.
In Hollywood Squares in the lower corner.
So does that make Bill our Paul Lind for the day? Or
Gilbert
well,
Gottfried.
actually, if we have a 3x2 grid, that means that this is not the Hollywood Squares, it's Match Game, and that makes me Brett Summers.
Oh, okay. Wow, I'd forgotten about the Match Game. Thank you.
Well, Nancy, that makes you Charles Nelson Riley. Allan, you are Fanny Flagg.
60s
Bill,
TV trivia.
You are Richard Dawkins. And let's see, Ira, I guess you could be Gary Berghoff. And Sandy Plotkin, that makes you Nipsey Russell.
A dream come true.
And we lost anybody under 60 in our audience. I apologize.
I'd rather be Nipsey Hussle, but I'll take Nipsey Russell.
Nipsey Hussle, right.
Well, actually, they're both now dearly departed. So, I mean, I guess you can
That's why
take
I'd
your pick.
kind of like to join them if this shit continues.
Wow, you know.
Just me.
That's quite a critique of my hosting, but okay. Let's
Oh,
move on.
no. I meant the external world beyond this dimension, side.
So for those of you who are interested in knowing, Sandy Plotkin is sort of in his own John Paul Sartre nightmare of no exit. So we just have to contend with that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have some news that just happened yesterday here in the state of Michigan. The Board of Canvassers made its decision regarding 5 Republican candidates for governor: James Craig, Perry Johnson, Michael Markey, Michael Brown, and Donna Brandenburg seem to now have found themselves off the ballot for this November. That, of course, is going to have some repercussions because it means that there's very few gubernatorial candidates on the GOP side who will be confronting incumbent Gretchen Whitmer. And of course, it brings in some real opportunities for some of the carpetbaggers from out of state, including Donald Trump, to then try to find someone for whom he can back. How do you see the decision going down with the Board of Canvassers? Obviously, the GOP party in the state is unhappy, including Mr. Weiser, who has already criticized the decision.
I think some may get back on the ballot through the courts. I could be wrong there. Maybe I'm wrong. Nancy says I'm wrong.
On what theory?
There, but
What's the theory?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. But I think it's interesting that Trump, just to go over to Trump. Trump has not endorsed. He's endorsed some candidates. He's endorsed the opponent for Peter Meyer. He's endorsed the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, but he has not endorsed a gubernatorial candidate because I think he knows Gretchen Whitmer is too strong a candidate and all the gubernatorial candidates are weak. He's sort of given a wink and a nod to Tudor Dixon as he did at the Macomb rally, but it's interesting that he has not stuck his neck out on that. So I find that intriguing.
You know,
Nancy.
Bill, are you an elections attorney? Have you done elections work at all? Bill?
I've done a little bit of election work, but not a ton. I just don't. I know enough about election law to know that there's no basis for this. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
we said you said at the top of the segment that they were off the ballot, and they are off the ballot pending inevitable lawsuits. And I think that at least Perry Johnson and James Craig have said they're going to challenge us in court. The others probably don't have the resources to do that. However, I know too often this hour is beat up on Republicans' hour, and I don't want to just pile on here, but I honestly, maybe you lawyers can help me explain what their argument is in this case, because they clearly have, thousands of fraudulent signatures due to them being, hooked up with the wrong signature gathering firm here. And I don't know how you overcome that in court. In fact, the memo that they filed a couple days before this meeting yesterday essentially said you can't discount these signatures unless you have personally verified all 68,000 as fraudulent. And what they had done is they had looked at selected sheets and seen that there were a number of fraudulent ones on a single sheet, and then they threw out the whole sheet because there was other evidence on the sheets themselves that they had been used in what they call like a signing party or whatever, where they essentially, a bunch of these guys just pass them around a circle and everybody uses a different color of pen, and so there'll be different handwriting styles and everything. But basically, I think they've kind of got them dead to rights. And unless you want to say that the law should be ignored because James Craig has been the putative front runner, I just don't see what their legal argument is.
Well, this is where the problem is with the GOP. I mean, they also don't like ambidextrous people because that's part of the alphabet soup. And by the way, just as a disclaimer, we do criticize Democrats on the show. We were quite critical of when Governor Whitmer took a private jet down to Florida. Nancy particularly doesn't like the shade of blue that the Democratic Party uses. So we do have balance here.
I know, but I wish we could get more Republicans to argue with on the show. But
we'll get more.
We will.
Right. As the first African American ever elected to Augusta Township, Augusta Township, I'm gonna tell you something. They make you jump through hoops when you filing for this stuff and everything else. And I remember I didn't file something on time in terms of reporting some money I had collected. And for every day I didn't file, I forget the dollar amount, but it was a dollar amount. And I was like, hey, I'm new. I don't understand this stuff. Hey, I'm trying to learn this stuff. They don't care. They're toast. They won't be on that ballot.
Yeah. But Ira, I mean, James Craig, as Allan said, is probably going to go ahead and challenge this. I mean, is this really just for show? I mean, he may have, as Allan said, deeper pockets than others. I mean, what chance do you really see this happening?
I think it's just for show. I think he's trying to save a little face right now. I think he hired a campaign manager who didn't know what they were doing, and he's going to pay for it. I was on a campaign with this particular judge, I forget her name, and the same thing happened to her. And he's not getting on the ballot. I'm telling you, I'll bet a cup of coffee right now. He will not get on that ballot.
Well, what kind of due diligence is required of a gubernatorial candidate? I mean, what kind of scrutiny does Craig have to do, Bill? I mean, this is freaking ridiculous.
Yeah, but look, Sandy's absolutely right. I mean, but it's not just for a gubernatorial candidate. I think you have to ask yourself, do we really want a governor, somebody who's going to be running the state, who can't run a campaign that makes sure that their signatures are valid?
Well, I mean, there's
a couple of things here. The burden is on the candidate. I made the mistake once, as Allan might remember, of running for judge, and I submitted my petitions early and found out they were invalid because I put the wrong address. I put my campaign headquarters address on the petitions rather than my home address. I had to go back out and start all over again. The burden's not on them. And if you look at the arguments that they're already making about why they should be on the ballot, they're trying to blame it on the board of canvassers who they say knew this was going on. me point out a couple things. One, they were paying as much as $25 a signature for
Wow.
these signatures. Think about this. That's $375,000 that they're paying to get on the ballot. If this was a Sesame Street show, I would be holding up an H for hypocrisy. And the reason I say that is these are every one of these candidates who are getting kicked off have been screaming about the election integrity, the big lie.
Right.
So doesn't this basically show that the system is working without then having to go through all of this specter of suspicion on the system?
Well, it shows that the system can work, but it's hypocrisy for them to say we believe in election integrity, but don't pay any attention to the fact that we're paying for false signatures to get on the ballot.
Well, Ira and Bill, let me ask you, you two guys ran for office. How did you collect? Did you pay somebody, or did you have volunteers, or how did that work for you guys?
Yeah, I had a volunteer. I had and basically the clerk who was running at the same time I was running. She was actually schooling me and kind of helping me out with everything. Because I didn't have a clue what was going on. And like I say, they're very strict on everything. I mean, you pay if you don't do things right, you don't get on the ballot. Period.
And these signature requirements are supposed to indicate that you have grassroots support, right?
Yes.
But as more and more money has flooded into even fairly low level races, on city councils and school boards and so forth, this has simply become the way things have to be done. And we've got these candidates. I mean, Craig doesn't have, he's well off, but he's not a bazillionaire like Perry Johnson is. And ever since, it seems as though since the Republicans began to impugn the so-called career politician, we have these egomaniacs like Perry Johnson and Donald Trump who think that they can just, I could do that job, even though I've never held an elected office in my life, and I've never done a job that bears any resemblance to the one that I'm running for. I know that I can do it, and I have a shit ton of money, and this is what I'm going to do to get it. And so they go out and they hire these professional signature firms. And from what Chad Zaleski's column, Lengel, that talked about how the era of the volunteer signature gatherer is just about over, at least at the state level. I mean, maybe you can still do it, for if you only need 1,500 or something, you can get all your buddies out there. But I mean, it's really hard to get 100, 50. People act like 15,000 signatures is easy. It's not. It's really hard, especially when you have to go through a winter like we just
I was walking down Cass Avenue, and there's some guy collecting signatures on different petitions, and it's got like two. I mean, it's not like people are passionate about these movements. They're just, they're getting paid. So he's like, hey, I've got this. And while you're there, I also have this. And I'm like, what's that?
Yeah, you have to be careful.
If you walk through Ann Arbor,
there are some exceptions. There are some exceptions to that, Allan. For example, I think that I have probably been asked 10 times by individuals who I know to sign petitions to get the referendum on the abortion issue on the ballot.
Oh,
there are people who are passionate about some of these who are out there. I know of no one who's paying for that particular referendum to get on the ballot, but I know plenty of people who are trying to get signatures signed.
But Bill, that's probably sadly an exception. What I was going to say, if you walk through Ann Arbor, which I do all the time, especially near the campus, of course, there are, like Allan said, there's literally people. They've got one guy I think he had 8 petitions. And
he's got a card table set up, right?
And I'm like, well, what is it? He's like, he may as well said, I don't know, just fucking, I'm getting paid, dude. And and they're over because they're getting paid more than $15 an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a much more enticing offer. And needless to say, a lot of them are deceptive too. They claim they're voting rights petitions, but then you look at it and they don't even know what it is. I've explained to some of them it's actually a voting restriction, not that they care. But But like you say, no, seriously, it's like, and I see these kids signing it, and I've gone up to a few and said, "Don't wait. Do you understand what you're signing? It's not voting rights; it's voting suppression." But literally, people that have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 petitions, and they're getting paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, over the last
actually,
12 years
the lowest number that they're paying per signature is $5 per signature. So think about that. If the person's got 8, he grabs one person. 8 times 5.
There you go.
It's $40.
$40.
Hey, 3 an hour is still $15 an hour.
And some of them.
And then you get those people that's out there, legitimately getting signatures and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you get some people who really don't want to be bothered. They'll put a fake name on there and a fake address to get rid of you too.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And that's why if you need 15,000 signatures, you better get 25 or 30,000 because those are the ones that get thrown out.
Yes.
Well, in the last 12 years here in Michigan, we've had one guy run as an outsider because he had a lot of money, and that was Rick Snyder, and won twice. We had another who ran as an outsider, Abdul El-Sayed, on the other side of the ballot. And there seems to be an awful lot of moxie that people have that you, in fact, not only don't need to be part of the establishment, but you really ought not be part of the establishment. Are we going to reach a tipping point here in Michigan where people are just going to get fed up with the non-establishment candidates thinking that this is some kind of political laboratory where people can just run in order to satisfy the fact that they never made student council president?
Well, Kevin Rinke put out, I wrote a column about this. He put out a newsletter maybe about 2-3 months ago, asking people to sign a petition asking Governor Whitmer to lift the COVID restrictions. And I'm like, what the hell is this guy talking about? I mean, these guys are clueless. It's like you wonder who's running, first of all, who's running their campaign that they would allow that to be sent out, but also the moronic.
They know. They're just trying. This is like whip the base. It's like get people upset, get them, get your name in their head, and somebody needs to change their smoke alarm battery. I don't know who.
Well, I don't know, Allan. I think that Governor Whitmer, to the best of my knowledge, still will not allow you to willfully spread COVID to somebody else. I think if we really are Americans, we should be able to pollute anybody. But I'm an immigrant, so what the hell do I know? But we do have another race that just occurred in Georgia. With the primaries down there. We won't talk about Pennsylvania because that's still pending. But in Georgia, there was some interesting developments. Governor Kemp, the incumbent, won his primary challenge against Sonny Perdue, Trump's guy down there, in a rather dramatic fashion. I mean, really slaughtered him. But I think more importantly, it seems that also the two other targets for Trump, Attorney General Chris Carr, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, both decisively won their respective primary challenges as well. So it seems as though something really held on, despite the rather withering attacks against them from the MAGA crowd. The one victory that Trump can claim is Senate candidate Herschel Walker, who won 68% of his primary against 4 or 5 other challengers. He also is holding some very interesting interviews, which, if any of you want to bring up, but
you're appalling. Oh my God.
Why, Nancy? Do you not get the irony?
No.
But
the Woody Allen movie.
but the fact, no, if it was a Woody Allen movie, Herschel Walker would have the humility of sitting there going, what am I doing here? But the fact is that this certainly served as a bit of a rebuke to the efforts of Trump really targeting Georgia for not complying with his wishes to find 11,000 votes to overturn the election over there. Can we read the tea leaves here? Is there something going on that perhaps can then create some momentum elsewhere, especially leading up to 2024?
Well, Georgia had been, it's been turning, as they say, purple for some time. And, if significant amount of vote is not suppressed, as Stacey Abrams claimed has been the case for quite some time, and I have no reason to doubt her on that, then this outcome is consistent with that trend, which is why they have to really suppress the vote. Otherwise, I think this is a continuing trend.
Atlanta is a very large city with multiple affluent suburbs.
Yep.
It's in some ways, not always, but in some ways it resembles Metro Detroit in that you
Yeah.
have a majority black urban core surrounded by these suburbs and exurbs and that go out for miles and miles and miles. And what do we know about the Republican Party and suburban voters? They are losing them like crazy. I mean, by the time you get to Milford, home of the Maddocks, you get the maggots who live out there who can't stand the idea of living within 40 miles of, the nearest, city where they might have to encounter a black person. But, it's the suburbs, the Oakland County type suburbs around Atlanta. They're full of women who with educations and brains and their husbands, and they don't want to vote for these clowns.
Well,
Herschel Walker, my God, that guy's like a walking, advertisement for, CTE. It's amazing. Go ahead.
We'll combine Herschel Walker, with Sammy Alito's draft opinion. And I have no idea if anyone's looked at it, if there's exit data, anything of the sort, but I have to wonder whether or not that's affecting the demographics you're talking about, Nancy.
Yeah, I think it probably is.
Jesus, you got Herschel Walker as the face of Georgia in the face of this opinion. It's got to be horrifying.
He's running
a Republican suburban woman.
I know, it really is.
I think Trump has traumatized the state of Georgia. I think he screwed up that Senate election. I mean, that was a miracle that two Democrats won. He just messed up the whole thing, and I think Republicans are pissed about that. And I think they're turning away from him, realizing what a nut. He's still got a few constellations out there like Marjorie Taylor Greene and stuff like that. But I think Trump is, and here in Michigan, I think in the end he's going to have a losing record. I think the Attorney General, I think Danny Nessel could be beat, but not by not by Matt DePerna. I think the Secretary of State is not going to be beat. Period. And I think Whitmer, I just think he's going to be a loser here, and I think he's going to be a loser in Georgia, and some other states. And hey, I don't know. Have they figured out who won in Pennsylvania? With Dr.
No, it looks
Oz?
like it's going to a recount now because it was just too close. So I think I think it's next week or June 8th is when the final decision will be made. Now Georgia's a little bit different than some of the other southern states because Atlanta has a very identifiable and robust black middle class. Is there any indication about which way, if it does go as a block, it might break? Would it go more traditional when it comes to some of the conservative values of the Republican Party, or will they go more traditional from the standpoint of their historic relationship with the Democratic Party?
Are you talking about black voters in Atlanta?
Talking about the black middle class. I mean, you mentioned Atlanta.
Yeah,
and yes, you do have this affluent white kind of like a perimeter around
but you also
the
do have
Beltway.
like you said, a very robust black middle class and upper middle class, and
that's right. And it's really exceptional to what you have down in the South. I mean, there's nothing like it in Florida, in the Carolinas, Alabama, Mississippi, etc. I mean, it really brings about a fascinating wrinkle to the politics of Georgia, as Sandy said, turning purple. But is there any indication when it comes to sort of social issues versus economic issues where the black demographic, the middle class demographic, might break there?
I don't know.
No?
Well, there's another interesting wrinkle, Saeed, which is I just noticed this morning there's more and more reporting on the Fulton County investigation heating up and kind of going up Trump's ass pretty deep. Sorry. Or maybe that's it. But, I mean, honestly, the subpoenas are coming out. There's all, and this RICO investigation is really heating up. And, Nancy.
I was just going to say, Fishman has said on the show, Steve Fishman has said many times that Georgia is a slam dunk, that case. He's got the voice on tape. Like, I would like you to do a crime for me.
Yes.
You say you play the tape and you say, is that your voice? And, unless he can say, no, that's an incredibly skilled impersonator. I think he's caught dead to rights.
Well, and you've got his co-conspirator in that, Lindsey Graham, as well.
Right.
On the phone. I mean, I could see why Fishman would say it's a slam dunk. And if people were avoiding it politically, that's certainly not the case in Fulton County.
Yeah.
It's going full steam ahead.
Bill and Sandy both practice in federal court. What do you think about the pace of this? It's like, as you say, a slam dunk, and yet nothing moves very quickly. Do you think it's going at the right pace, or that you feel like there's some resistance there, or they?
Well, Bill, how long does a grand jury investigate? It can take years, and she's now got people coming in under subpoena next month.
It's not fast enough for me.
Right.
But I'm not sure that means anything. I am constantly amazed by Trump's Teflon coat. I can't understand why he hasn't been indicted in half a dozen different places.
Right, including New York.
Not to mention his, just the tax fraud stuff. Yeah, I still don't understand why he hasn't been indicted in New York.
Well, speaking of endoscopes, I think things are getting hot in New York as well, right, Sandy?
Well, it seems to be the case again on a state level. I think if Bill is referring more to a federal level, I mean, you've only got a 40-year racketeering enterprise with Trump. You've only got a 40-year history of money laundering by Trump, possibly, allegedly, possibly for Russian mafia money, taking millions of dollars of cash before currency reporting requirements, or possibly after for his Sunny Isles in Florida. I mean, it's on and on and on. And Bill and I know, have represented mopes in the federal system. I've got cases now. I know that Bill does. These people are exposed to years, destroying our clients, their families, extended families. And for what? We're accomplishing nothing. This guy's destroying the whole freaking country and its foundation, but our clients are going to do the time for him and his daughter and his son and son-in-law. It's repulsive.
It is repulsive.
I don't know what else to say.
It is repulsive, and you're absolutely right. But I have to say, there is, I did not really fully appreciate until I heard some talking heads talking about it somewhere, that people, I think Democrats in particular, but even federal prosecutors, are worried about the precedent that it sets to criminally prosecute, and perhaps imprison a former president of the United States. And they're, they've all, I mean, the right wing, the super right wing.
Respectfully, I have to tell you that as somebody who, I really believe in this country. My parents were immigrants, and they taught me about how important this country was, how they gave us a chance. And I became a lawyer in large part because I believed in this system. I'm more worried about the precedent if we don't do something.
Right.
If we allow a sitting president to commit crimes, then what we're saying is that there are some people who are simply above the law.
I fully agree with you.
We can talk a lot about the breakdown of this system, but I think that there is nothing more dangerous to this country than the fact that I think that the younger generation truly believes that, if you got a lot of money, you don't got to worry about this.
You're absolutely right.
If you're Jeff Feiger and Ben Johnson and they come after you, you're going to get off. But if you're not a millionaire, you're not going to get off. I think that's dangerous.
You're absolutely right. But the hard right-wing candidates who are running for Congress now are promising that if they get the majority in the House, they are going to impeach Joe Biden. Why? For whatever bullshit reason they come up with, because of his son's laptop, the fucking Hunter Biden's laptop. earlier this week, do you know, I didn't even see it on our list of topics today, but earlier this week, there was a story in the New York Times by Maggie Haberman, who is as plugged in as any reporter in Washington, especially on the Trump beat, saying that Trump was chuckling and laughing over the idea of this crowd chanting "Hang Mike Pence." Yeah. This is his own vice president.
Good humor.
You're absolutely right. This guy should have been behind bars years ago.
But you know, I think that's the whole issue. I think that I've helped put together state RICO cases and federal RICO cases. And as these attorneys know, it takes time. And I think that's why they're taking so much time. They want to cross their T's and dot their I's because he is the president. Yeah. But I guarantee you, I really believe this. I mean, fully believe it. Me and Sandy talk about this all the time. He's going to get indicted. The president's
we do have a dinner bet on that. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, Nancy.
Okay. You
can, in a lot of reporting, and investigative reporting has been done on Trump over the decades. And I think that you could, it would have to be very specific. Criminal activity, financial fraud, very specific facts, events. Investigate Joe Biden, investigate Hillary Clinton, investigate, Chris Murphy. The point is it precedent if you find criminal activity versus politicians where you're not going to have this 40-year history of, but this guy is a criminal. Out and out
criminal enterprise
experience. He has never written a policy paper. He has never written an op-ed. He could give a shit about politics. He's a grifter that made it to the White House.
Right.
That is dangerous.
It really
I want to say that in Israel, which is a democracy, they've said their prime minister, that one prime minister went to prison. They've indicted another one. And that's, like I say, a solid democracy like ours. And they're not afraid to do it.
Good
and
point.
they had, and we shouldn't be afraid to do it either.
I hope so. I mean, my heart tells me, yes, this guy belongs in prison, but I'm just, I have come to understand. That's all I'm saying. I've come to understand the arguments of people who say that, this is a step. We're stepping off a cliff if we do this. And I don't agree, but I understand.
I could see Trump like, in Goodfellas where the steaks come in and the lobster tail, he's shaving the little garlic, helping make dinner.
Yeah.
I was going to say he's more like Bugsy, where he goes ahead and just gets everybody to shine his shoes while he's in the clink. But that's, a whole different movie. Look, there's only one person who can enjoy that kind of sovereign immunity. And she just turned 96 and she's celebrating her 70th year on the British throne. Just putting that out there as a British subject. So, of course, she's got rotten kids. But then I guess so does Trump. So we now have, of course, yet another mass shooting in America. This time in Uvalde, Texas, outside San Antonio, Robb Elementary School. Population of the whole town is 16,122. As of this morning, 19 kids were killed, 2 teachers were killed, 17 are injured. I don't have the words, so I will.
I have a video.
We have a video.
A quickie.
American exceptionalism is so awful.
I'm sorry you think American exceptionalism is awful.
I think this aspect of it.
You got your political agenda.
No, it's honestly,
God love you.
Senator, it's not. I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
Well, it is just an American problem, sir.
Mr. Cruz, why is America the only country that faces this kind of mass shooting?
But you can't answer that. You can't answer that, can you, sir? You can't answer that. Why is this
Why is it that people come from all over the world to America? Because it's the freest, most prosperous, safest country on earth.
It may be the freest, it may be the most
popular. Why are our kids dying in school?
Well, that was Texas Senator Ted Cancun Cruz talking about
one of the biggest cowards in the world.
Why people come to America. Of course, the amount of carnage that America has caused elsewhere in the world might be one of those pull factors to come to the U.S. But I don't know. Then again, I think after we all watch Top Gun Maverick, we might feel as though this is the best damn country in the world again. So.
If he had put his hands on me while I was the way he put his hands on that reporter, I think I could have come up from down from the basement with a nice uppercut to the jaw, and just like, and no court in the world would have convicted me.
I think you're.
I was going to hope that you're going to suggest your knee would come up, Nancy.
No. I'm going to hit him like a man, right on that. Oh my God, that punch.
Or smack him like a what, right?
Yeah.
So Ted Cruz found a modicum of conscience in which he has decided that he's not going to be, I believe, at the NRA convention in Houston this weekend.
Wow.
A convention which, by the way, prohibits anybody from bringing a gun into the conference. So you've got that going on. So where do we go from this? I mean, we have sports teams, for example, like the Miami Heat, making announcements and, in fact, encouraging their fans to not only contact congresspeople and other politicians for common sense gun laws, but also encouraging them to register to vote. Now, since no NBA team, to the best of my knowledge, is a 501c tax-exempt nonprofit corporation, they don't have to worry about lobbying restrictions. But are we seeing a cultural shift now from those that are opinion makers not on Fox News?
Well, maybe Mitch McConnell looked at some recent polling of the last 24 hours, and he wants Cornyn to engage in talks. But in this vague thing, McConnell said something about, but specifically about this incident. So maybe he wants to outlaw guns near that school. I mean, it's... how can you take any of this credibly by the GOP?
Well, there was a gun by the school, and the guy still let him in.
Sure.
There was a situation down at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in Florida where the cops ran away. There were reports even here in Uvalde that the cops didn't go in for an hour because they were scared of getting shot.
Right. But if you give a homeroom teacher a gun. Go ahead, Bill.
Can I get in on this?
Yes.
I tell you, I have a real problem. I am concerned about this, what I consider to be the diversion here. I don't want to talk about the fact that the cops didn't go in and shoot this guy fast enough, because it takes away from the fact that the real root cause of this problem is the fact that we have a gun culture.
Yeah.
And and we really are going to, because what I think the NRA is laughing their ass off right now and are willing to throw the cops under the bus because they can say, see, the problem was we didn't kill this guy fast enough. If we would have armed the teachers could have shot him. If we would have done it, and it takes away from the fact that we are the only society that has this particular problem. I mean, there is no comparable society.
That reporter with the British accent,
and it's the gun culture.
Speaking the truth. Yeah,
Ted Cruz. Right. It is the gun culture that causes the problem. It's the fact that at 18, at the day he turned 18, this kid could buy 2 automatic rifles.
Yep,
that's the problem. And this is not a Republican. This is not a Democratic thing. 85% of the people in this country agree with rid of assault rifles, doing the background checks. We don't have the political courage to make it happen. We don't really believe in it. It's like so many problems that we have. It's like young girls getting assaulted, young girls and boys getting assaulted in schools. We know how to fix these problems. We won't do it. We don't mean it. We simply don't mean it when we say the kids are the most important part of our society. We don't mean it.
Ted Cruz was saying that the solution maybe is to have a one-way door, that one door for entering, exiting, whatever. Yeah. That's the
door control. We need door control.
Door control. And the interesting thing was when Beto O'Rourke came to the press conference with Governor Abbott, and he interrupted, and they were like, Governor Abbott says, I'm talking to people, the sheriff and stuff. And I say, what is the problem? And the problem is, he says, mental health. He goes, that's the problem. And so they won't recognize guns as an issue. And so when Beto O'Rourke comes there and they say, how dare you make a political issue of this? It's like, and he goes out there and says, who's going to solve it? we're here, to represent. We're here to solve. It is a political issue, and they go, oh my God, it's too soon. People are dying. People are grieving. How can you talk about making a political football out of this? And it's just total bullshit. It's like, when is it? I thought Sandy Hook was going to be the turning point, and when that was not the turning point, I said, fuck it. There is no turning point.
Yeah.
Ira, I mean, you're a consultant for Hollywood, and I mean, we can talk about the gun culture in society, but there's a gun culture that's glorified in Hollywood as well. How do you see those two things connected?
I see them really connected too, because I was just in Hollywood. We were with Chris Mundy and his team, and we were talking about the script that we were writing. And we interviewed some other officers too, not to give away the show or anything like that. But a lot of officers said, they were inspired by television, and even when I was on the undercovers and doing stuff like that, I was trying to be that television cop too. So I think television have a lot to do with some of this stuff too, because we kind of glorify guns, we glorify violence, we glorify all this crap. But I don't think it's going to change much, because people like that excitement. People like to see those.
People love guns.
Yes,
they love their guns.
They do like guns, but it's funny if you watch. If you have Prestige cable, and I do, or Prestige, whatever, you'll notice that some of the grisliest crime shows come out of Scandinavia. A place where you can walk down the street at 4:00 in the morning with 100 kroner bills hanging out of your pocket, and nobody is going to assault you. And it's funny that these people. I saw Rana. Don't call me Romney McDaniel talking about, we have to talk about violent video games. Japan has some of the pornography. Japan has some of the grossest pornography and most violent video games I have ever seen in my life. And Tokyo is an amazingly safe city. All of these European capitals are safe, because they don't have guns. They don't have as many guns.
So Nancy, after you saw this Japanese pornography, you didn't want to go out and shoot anyone, right?
No, I wanted to lay off sex for 3 months. This is disgusting. But
look, Japan is not the idyllic society you think it is. I just read about a guy who spent $20,000 so that he could live his life as a border collie. Full outfit and everything.
No, they have a deeply weird substrate to their culture, but it isn't violent.
But Marco Rubio would tell you to focus on China, not Japan.
Oh, yeah,
that's where all the problems are.
And you know what? Kids been dying out here for I know the 40 years I've been in law enforcement. Kids been dying out here, not with just these school shootings, but just all kinds of shootings, drive-by shootings, and everything else. Yeah. I agree with Bill. They really don't care. Nobody really cares, because you could really address this problem. There's all kinds of enhancement laws, gang enhancement laws. There's all kinds of things they could do, but nobody's really caring about these kids getting killed.
There's guns everywhere. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's horrible, these mass shootings, but we're seeing every weekend, every day in the city of Detroit, of Chicago. I was in Chicago, whatever it was, 2-3 weeks ago. I'm walking back to the hotel. There were 1 million cops out there. Some teenager was shot and killed in the Loop, where normally those things aren't happening. It's everywhere. And in the community, we ignore the fact that people are dying in the city all the time from gun violence. And
I've always said fear and anger.
You got the video.
No, I was going to say that, but fear and anger equals rage. And I think that's what's going on in our country right now. People are enraged. And then some of these young people, like you said, with mental illness, and some of these older people with mental illness, if you got a gun and you enraged, well, you know what? I'm gonna do something. I'm hurting. I'm gonna hurt somebody else. So I want somebody else to hurt the way I'm hurting too.
Well, but look at the culture, the Crumblies. The kid was saying, I'm delusional. Yes. I'm seeing things. I'm having mental illness. They don't get him help. They buy him a gun for Christmas.
But Allan, you know what? I want to pick up on Ira was saying too, which is, look, yeah, ATF will make some chicken shit bust every day in the hood, the East Side Detroit, West Side Detroit. Mm-hmm. Big deal. They have their numbers and their budgets. But in reality, I agree with Ira. If they really cared about violence in Detroit, there'd be more than the occasional bust of a rock dealer with a couple guns. There's stash houses all over Detroit with hundreds of weapons. There's more guns in this country than people. And these 50, Republican senators care about kids? Of course they don't. Of course they don't.
And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, but years ago, cops could be more proactive. When I came on and we was assigned a gang squad, we were proactive. We were like, go out there and search for those guns. Go out there and get those illegal guns off the street, because we knew, regardless of dope and everything else, guns was what could kill us and kill other people.
Yeah.
So we focused on going out there, shaking cars down, developing probable cause, and people are, well, they didn't have the right to pull me over. There's enough probable cause to pull anybody over if you need to. But developing probable cause, but you go after these people with guns and looking for guns. And trust me, we were pulling guns off the street, and it brought down crime a little bit too. But now cops can't be that proactive anymore. Cops can't, it's a lot of things they can't do. Like they get second guessed if you call in a real task force or somebody, a real tactical team to take out the shooter, because those DPS guys, a lot of them might be retired cops. They're older, they're tired. They done survived 40 years on one job. Now they're doing 10 years on another job. And it's like, I'm not running in there because I'm not equipped. I'm not mentally equipped or even physically equipped. So that's some of the problems too. There's no really contingencies on say, hey, what happens if a bunch of mass shooters they get together and say, let's go and hit a bunch of schools. We need some real contingencies on this kind of thing that's going on right now.
And this copycat
I agree
was happening.
I'm sorry, what, Saeed?
I agree with what Ira said, but I want to back up here. I don't think that we ought to be dumping on the cops.
Right.
I don't think this is an issue about the cops need to take the guns off the streets. That's like saying, oh, we already have laws to enforce. I mean, this Paxton, the idiot who is the attorney general of Texas, who says, oh, we don't need gun laws. The laws don't work. The guy who's supposed to be the top law enforcement person in the state of Texas says laws don't work, and his explanation is we have murder laws. It didn't stop this guy. The guy's
well,
crazy.
What the thing? What's interesting? The laws.
We ought to get. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that you can talk to people from ATF who are the overlords of enforcement, and they'll tell you they don't get enough funding. That's how these groups, the NRA fights the funding, fights putting a permanent director there. They do everything to make automatic
difficult. We shouldn't have automatic rifles available for sale. These aren't hunters. This whole notion, this whole idea that we need automatic rifles, that we need automatic pistols, that we need these large magazines and clips doesn't make any sense. It's not a Second Amendment issue. If it were, then Sandy could go buy an atomic bomb, because that's just another arms that he ought to be entitled to own. It's a ridiculous proposition. If we gave a shit about these kids, if we really were worried about gun violence, we would simply not make it the duty of the police to get the illegal arms off the streets. We wouldn't allow the police to be out-armed. You want to talk about a tragedy?
But here's the problem.
Kid driving down the street, leaning out of his car, shooting at the cops this weekend.
Yeah.
But Bill, it's so beyond. I mean, I agree with 100%. 100%. What should not be for sale. But how about this? Go online and get your AR-15 ghost kits. There's so many ghost guns in this country. There's so many ghost guns in Michigan. The whole thumb is a ghost gun. I mean, this state is prime for an armed civil war. Forget the country. Yeah. I mean, I'm just putting that, Saeed, is that the hundreds long history of this culture has embedded so many goddamn weapons in this country. I don't know where you start. I don't know where you even start.
Can I just make one comment? Because I know
the manufacturers go civilly after these gun manufacturers.
That's an excellent idea. It's like it's the only product
there you go
in the country that you can't see the manufacturer.
Exactly.
Can I just say one other thing?
Well,
though,
they did that in Sandy Hook, though.
I'll make it quick.
actually won.
I also want to, even though I understand why we have kids have to have lockdown drills and so forth, I really want to push back against the people who say the answer is metal detectors or single entrances or more police in schools or armed teachers or whatever. Turning a school into an armed camp has a psychological effect on the kids who have to learn there that I think has to be considered, and it has to be given priority over yet another, throw a stupid idea, at the mob and then hope it'll shut them up until the next shooting.
Yeah.
That we're hearing about this week. I mean, it is so dispiriting to me, the idea that in Oxford, even in Oxford, which is a very gun heavy community, their answer was clear backpacks. It's like, oh, that's going to take care of everything. I mean, that's ridiculous. The
city of Detroit, DC, where I would go into some of the high schools to help with the school papers, they all have metal detectors. That's just a fact of life. They've been there for decades now. Ira knows. I've been there for decades. And look, in the meantime, I think what we have to realize is that the fix isn't going to be immediate. It's a long-term thing of getting assault rifles off the streets. In the meantime, there does have to be some, other measures taken to protect. But look, in Israel, you go to the train station, they check your bags. You walk into the mall, they check your bag. We have fought that because we want freedom. We have to decide at what point, and I guess the frequency may be a determination. Like we start having more and more mall shootings and grocery store shootings. I don't know. We're gonna have to make a determination how much of our restriction that we're allowing.
It's a complicated problem, and complicated problems never have simple solutions. It's going to have to be a bunch of little things that all are brought together.
Look at this attitude. That guys show up at the state capitol of Michigan with AR-15s, and what's the punishment? They're invited into the speaker's office.
Right, exactly.
I mean, Jesus Christ. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what message that's sending.
Well, this is the whole idea about emulation. I mean, there were at least 3 to 4 copycat attempts made with AR-15s since Uvalde. Luckily, all of those were thwarted before they were able to get there. Look, my sister and I went to see the Bell and Sebastian concert last night, and they checked us coming in, not for guns, but I don't know what the hell they were checking for, but guns were also able to be removed from the possibility, except anybody who would bring a gun to a Bell and Sebastian concert. I'm like, how depraved can you?
Man.
You're not getting any message there. Well, listen, there are plenty of topics we could, I'm sure, reach, but we have arrived at that part of the show where, take it away, Schmuck. Yes, that's right. We are now at Schmuck of the Week. I am sure there's any list of people who can join this hallowed legion of people. So we're going to start with Ira. Who is your Schmuck of the Week?
Ted Cruz. I would like to do a big slap against him. I'd just like to walk in and smack the dog, out of him. Ted Cruz, I think he's a coward. He's one of those little mealy mouth mush. I mean, he's worse than Trump, I think.
Even his own.
You're going to have to go apologize to the cowards for comparing Cruz to them.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, yes.
I'd be a bit careful there, Ira. I mean, I don't care. He's a U.S. senator, but his dad capped JFK. So that's a deep bench you got to worry about there, buddy.
That's true. That's true.
Okay,
I've had a target on my back a couple of times. I'm okay with that.
Okay, very good. As long as we know. Okay, Sandy.
Well, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Well, I'm just going to go with little Marco Rubio. I mean, I just in the heat of the moment, no pun intended, the heat game, to immediately pivot and try and distract to China. I mean, because it could take down polling numbers and support. It's just, I don't know, man. He and Cruz are joined at the hip, just joined at the hip.
Okay, when you thought that imagery couldn't get worse,
Sorry,
that's okay. Bill.
You know, I found myself screaming at Abbott, the governor of Texas, on TV the other day, and so he was at the top of my list. But I was reading a law journal this morning. Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, has got to be my pick this week for a couple of reasons. One, his comment about laws don't work, therefore you shouldn't bother to pass gun laws. Two, he's being investigated by the Texas Bar Association for his perpetuation of the big lie. And in response to that, he decided to begin open investigation of the Texas Bar for their liberal bent.
Yeah,
there you go.
The guy is nothing short of amazing, and he had the nerve to get on Fox television and talk about how this is really a mental illness crisis.
Yeah.
Apparently, Americans are more mentally ill than the rest of the world, which is why we have these school shootings.
Well, Bill,
so
just,
much
just
for
in case
waving the American flag.
Bill, just in case you're trying to land a nomination for the U.S. Supreme Court, I got to tell you, I'll save you a lot of trouble. They don't require you to read law journal articles anymore. So, you know, I'll just save you a lot of effort.
It is a holdover from being as old as I am, that I started to do this 42 years ago, and I still do it.
Okay. All right. Nancy.
I'm not trying to, I couldn't get elected judge, and I'm not trying to get the nomination for the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Thanks.
All right. Because I usually bring a schmuck and a backup schmuck, and this week I brought three, and Ted Cruz and Ken Paxton have already been claimed by my fellow panelists. So we are going to my number three schmuck, which is Don Mclean. I saw the poster, the lineup for the NRA convention in Houston coming up in a few days, and he was apparently one of the entertainers. This is, of course, the guy who gave us American Pie. And I read his mealy mouth. He is bowed out because he thinks it would just be a bad look.
Bad
And
optics.
so I was reading his mealy mouthed bullshit bow out statement, and then I read something that has apparently been on the web for 100 years about what a jerk he is. It was written by one of the people who played as an opening act for him a few years back, and he is schmuck from the get-go. So an obscure left field choice today, Don Mclean.
Noted.
Wow. Well, I mean, I have to wonder though that who's backup in the music? Is it going to be Up With People?
Well, they already have Lee Greenwood, and apparently he's still there. So, you know, we'll see.
The Rocket.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Allan.
I am going to go with Sean Wilmoth, the guy who helped collect the signatures for all the candidates. And he's a schmuck. I mean, he's a criminal. He's convicted, you know, of fraud and all this stuff. He's a schmuck, but he's also a hero for getting rid of some of those schmucks, knocking them off the ballot. So
that picture of him that we ran with the dyed dagger beard was just, it's like if you put 100 headshots in a room and said, pick the guy that's running this signature scam, I would have picked him out of 100. So there.
Wow, I can't believe we made it through all five of you, and none of you picked either of my two people, because I always have a backup like Nancy. Well, one of them I was going to have was Josh Donaldson, the New York Yankee, who decided to call a player on the Chicago White Sox Jackie, leading to a bench clearing brawl, to the point where he then had to go ahead and apologize to Jackie Robinson's widow to say, look, you know, I didn't mean any disrespect.
Oh,
but
yeah.
That pales in comparison to actually, I think maybe he didn't intend to say that it was Jackie Robinson. I think he meant to call the guy Jackie Collins. But my schmuck of the week has to be Senate candidate Herschel Walker.
Wow, yeah.
Because in one of his interviews, this in the aftermath of Uvalde, he actually said this, quote, Cain killed Abel, and that's a problem that we have.
Yes.
What we need to do is look into how we can stop these things. You know, you talked about doing a disinformation. What about getting a department that can look at young men that's looking at women, that's looking at social media. What about that? Looking into things like that, and we can also stop that way. But yet they want to just continue to talk about taking away your constitutional rights. And I think there's more things we need to look into. This has been happening for years, and the way we stop is putting money into the mental health field by putting money into other departments rather than departments that want to take away your rights.
I told you, he is a walking advertisement for what is it?
Brain damage?
Yeah, but it's CTE.
CTE?
I can't remember what the CTE stands for.
But you know
Traumatic something. But yeah. So
Saeed, he plucked that right out of the Federalist Papers.
Well, actually, I thought that this was the backup question to Miss Teen South Carolina in that pageant, because that is about as lucid as that. So for going ahead and somehow bringing in the Bible, which the last time I checked, the Second Amendment doesn't trump the Ten Commandments, and that whole idea about the sequence of looking at young men, that's looking at women, that's looking at social media, creating this into a political Russian doll. Herschel Walker, you are my Schmuck of the week.
Excellent.
Well, anyways, we are at the end of our show. Thank you, Ira Todd. Thank you, Sandy Plotkin. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. And with thanks, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
Have a great Memorial Day week, everybody. Take care.
A great weekend.
Have a great one, guys.